4 of the largest technology companies on Earth have committed $650 billion in a single year. Not over a decade, not spread across a generation of careful planning in 1 year on data centers. To understand what $650 billion actually feels like, try this. Stack that amount in $100 bills, and the pile rises 710 kilometers into the sky, clearing the orbit of the International Space Station by over 300 kilometers. And that is just 2026. The plan is to scale this to $9 trillion in total data center investment by 2030. More money has been committed to AI data centers in the last 6 years than was spent on the Marshall Plan, the Manhattan Project, the entire Apollo moon program, and the construction of the International Space Station, combined with $120 billion left over. This is the largest coordinated infrastructure bet in the history of capitalism. And here is what the press releases are not telling you. Nearly half of the data centers planned to open in the United States this year have already been delayed or canceled outright. According to Bloomberg, around 140 projects were scheduled to come online in 2026, representing 12 gigawatts of computing power, enough to power 9 million homes. Only a third are actually being built. The rest exist on paper, in announcements that quietly disappeared. So here's the question. If the world is spending the largest sum ever committed to a single infrastructure build, how is it possible that the infrastructure itself is falling apart before it gets off the ground? And who is paying the price while the tech companies collect their tax breaks? When ChatGPT launched in late 2022 and reached 100 million users faster than any product in history, it triggered something that can only be described as institutional panic among the world's largest technology companies. Every major CEO reached the same conclusion simultaneously. Whoever controlled the computing infrastructure would control the future of AI, and whoever controlled AI would control everything else. The logic was simple. AI gets smarter the more computing power you give it. Computing power comes from data centers, so build data centers as fast as physically possible. The number of AI data centers in the United States went from essentially 0 a decade ago to somewhere between 4,000 and 5,400 today. At the peak of the boom, more than 2 facilities were breaking ground every single week. States rolled out the red carpet. Texas handed out over $1 billion in incentives for the Stargate project alone. Virginia saw 56 data center projects received nearly $1 billion in tax savings in a single fiscal year. The financial markets went along enthusiastically. The shoe company Allbirds announced it was pivoting to leasing AI data center equipment. Their stock rallied 580%. It made no rational sense, but in the fever of the boom, that was the norm. Here's the number that puts the economic distortion in sharpest focus. Last year, 92% of US GDP growth came from data center spending. Remove AI infrastructure from the calculation, and the rest of the American economy grew by 0.1%. The entire growth story of the world's largest economy was resting on a foundation of data centers that were, as we are about to see, not actually being built. The gap between announcement and reality in this build-out is one of the most striking disconnects in recent business history. Microsoft is the clearest example. None of the data centers it announced since 2023 have been completed on schedule. Its Fairwater facility was publicly described as fully complete. Satellite imagery shows it is not even half finished. Microsoft has now quietly canceled or deferred up to 2 gigawatts of planned capacity globally. Power is the first bottleneck. One large hyperscale AI facility can consume as much electricity as a city of 200,000 homes. The GPU racks running modern AI models use dramatically more power than the server hardware that preceded them. Around 25% of planned 2026 projects have not even disclosed how they intend to power themselves. An extraordinary admission of how far ahead of practical planning these announcements ran. The main electrical components required, transformers, switchgear, backup batteries, are in critically short supply, with the majority imported from China. High-power transformer imports surged from fewer than 1,500 units in 2022 to over 8,000 in 2025. But with escalating geopolitical tensions and tariffs disrupting supply chains, that pipeline has become unreliable. As one analyst put it plainly, if one piece of your supply chain is delayed, your whole project cannot deliver. Skilled labor compounds the crisis. Meta began training fiber technicians from scratch because it cannot hire experienced workers fast enough. These tech giants are not only short on equipment, they are short on the people required to install it. The Oracle and OpenAI Stargate campus in Texas has reportedly stalled amid supply and financial complications. confirming that even the most high-profile projects are not immune. The financial failures of the build-out are significant but abstract. The costs being borne by ordinary people living near these facilities are not abstract at all, and they rarely appear in the earnings calls or investment theses. In Virginia, residents are estimated to be breathing the exhaust gases of 10,000 diesel generators running during construction and testing phases across hundreds of facilities. In Utah, approval was granted for a 40,000-acre campus that would expel heat equivalent to 23 atomic bombs into the surrounding valley every single day. Community opposition was so intense, the developer was forced to cut the project in half. According to the United Nations, data centers globally will consume as much water as 1.3 billion people by 2030. The noise issue is consistent and documented. Residents near facilities in Virginia, Georgia, and Texas report a constant low-frequency hum from cooling systems that vibrates through walls and disrupts sleep. One resident in Manassas, Virginia, spent $200,000 on insulation and new windows and still cannot escape it. In Georgia, families found heavy sediment in their taps after nearby construction began. Then, there is the electricity bill. Georgia Power raised rates 6 times between 2023 and 2025, a 24% total increase driven substantially by data center demand. Oregon residents saw a 50% increase since 2020. Oregon schools lost $275 million in potential tax income due to property tax abatements granted to developers, money that was supposed to fund education. And those thousands of promised jobs? Even the largest data centers typically employ fewer than 150 permanent workers. A recent survey found 65% of Americans now oppose data centers being built in their communities. Data center cancellations due to local opposition quadrupled in 2025. At least 25 projects canceled that year due to community backlash, up from just 6 in 2024. Maine became the first U.S. state to pass a statewide ban on data center construction, prohibiting new builds until late 2027. 13 other states are now considering similar measures. In one small town, residents voted to block a data center from being built. Construction proceeded anyway. The town was then sued by the developer. A small municipality simply cannot match a major technology company in prolonged litigation. Illinois approved a data center the size of 600 football fields that will consume more than half the electricity of the entire city of Chicago, despite hundreds of community members showing up in opposition. Meanwhile, the financial picture is deteriorating. The core issue is the mismatch between the certainty of spending and the uncertainty of returns. Around $34 billion in data center bonds have been issued recently, with 84% rated A, safe enough for pension funds. But those A-rated bonds are paying 8, 9, and sometimes 12% interest. Those are junk bond level rates, implying a level of risk the credit ratings are not officially acknowledging. This pattern echoes dynamics seen before the 2008 crisis. Not in banks this time, but in private investors who have absorbed enormous exposure to data center debt. If open-source AI models, freely available and rapidly improving, reach 80% of the capability of proprietary frontier models, the business case for the trillion-dollar proprietary infrastructure bet collapses. This is not a hypothetical risk. It is happening now. The AI build-out assumed infinite political tolerance, infinite grid capacity, infinite supply chains, and infinite community patience. None of those assumptions held. There are better ways to build this infrastructure. Underwater data centers already exist in China. Container capsules on the ocean floor, using naturally cold seawater for passive cooling. One operator reports that 99% of electricity consumed goes directly to computing, compared to roughly 50% in traditional air-cooled facilities. Local AI models running on-device without requiring massive data centers are improving rapidly. If most laptops can run capable AI models within 3 years, demand for centralized infrastructure does not disappear, but it becomes smaller, more targeted, and less destructive. What comes next is almost certainly a period of consolidation. Projects with genuine anchor tenants, confirmed power supply, and real community consent will get built. Many announced on speculation will quietly disappear. The communities in the middle, paying higher electricity bills, sleeping badly next to facilities they never approved, will not get back what was already taken. But the next phase of this build-out will be slower, more contested, and more accountable than the one we just lived through. Data centers are not going away, and probably should not. But the era of building them on the assumption of unlimited tolerance from communities, grids, and supply chains is over. What comes next will have to be earned differently. And that is a conversation the industry is only just beginning to have.